So, hello, namaste, good evening, maybe even good morning or good afternoon in whichever part of the world you are joining us from. My name is Deepak Khemani and I am your host today for this sixth episode of the third season of the PSAI talk show. PSAI, the Professional Speakers Association of India, where people like you and me, experienced speakers, public speakers, upcoming speakers meet, gather, become members, learn from each other, get mentored so that we all can take the business of speaking to the next level. Continuing in our series of the PSAI talk show, today we have a very important guest, a professional speaker who is going to be joining us today. Her name is Sharada Subramaniam. Let us all welcome Sharada.
Good
Hello,
evening.
Sharada. Namaste. Welcome.
Namaste, Deepak. Welcome. Thank you very much for your warm welcome and a very
So,
good evening, good morning, good afternoon to all listeners here on
yes,
this.
yes, indeed. You know, we have got viewers who join us from across the world from different time zones. So that is why I always say good morning, good afternoon, or maybe even good evening where we are just now. Just let me introduce a little bit about who Sharda is, what she does, and then we will hear from her about what she does, why she does that, and how with her experience and mentoring and coaching abilities, she's helping change the lives of people in and around us. So, Sharada Subramaniam is a leadership coach. She is an entrepreneur, a best selling author, former principal director of the CAG of India. Wow! A few years ago, the CAG was in the news for all, sometimes the right reasons, sometimes the wrong reasons. She has 28 years of experience of civil service. She calls herself a sociopreneur. So we will understand from her what a sociopreneur means. And she is an alumni of the IIM Bangalore. Ladies and gentlemen, I hereby officially welcome Sharada Subramaniam. Sharada Subramaniam, welcome to the PSAI Talk Show.
Thank you so much, Deepak. I'm indeed honored to be here, and it's really a privilege for any speaker worth their salt to be able to come on a forum such as this and speak. Thank you so much.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. How you started, what did you do, how did you switch over from being in the civil service to becoming a leadership coach, writing of your book, and your sociopreneur activities?
Thank you, Deepak. I think before I even talk about civil services, I will have to take you a bit further back, right up to my childhood, because I think what really created the person you see before you today are the experiences of those days. And I think the best thing that I was given was a cultural, multi-generational kind of an environment that I grew up in. Uh, I am a Tamilian. I was born in Bihar. my father served in Bihar for several years, so quite a lot of our dinner table conversations around the evenings were on political, social, economic issues. We
Yes.
had a lot of discussion on politics. We had a lot of discussion on the economy. We would travel
Yeah.
with them. Sometimes our family vacations would kind of coordinate with some of his official tours. So we had been to some of the remotest places. We'd kind of seen the contradiction between the so somewhat privileged lifestyle we ourselves had, having working as a children of senior bureaucrats, and then the kind of disadvantaged sections that we would often meet up with. So I think
Yeah.
the empathy or the feeling that there is a large section of society that is kind of deprived of the same privileges that I have. And I think the other
Yeah.
very big importance was I grew up in a family of only two girls, and we were born
Hmm.
very late to our parents. So we were given the kind of education and the kind of feeling that we were not nowhere different from boys. I learned how to change tires, where we would know how to repair a puncture, we would fix the plug
Wow.
blew up. So things which you normally expect girls to have exposure
Yeah.
to, we had that.
Yes.
That gave
Yeah.
us a sense of I can do anything kind of feeling. The feeling of the courage and the ability to withstand uh, problems, and that's what came
Yes.
in early education. Of course, my education itself, I would say some of the biggest learnings I got were from my school in Patna, the Notre Dame
Hmm.
Academy, where learned a lot of we had an opportunity to participate in so many different activities, kind of gave you an interest in so many different things. And also I think it was the gift of the gap because of the number of discussions we would have on so many issues. There were arguments, there were discussions, there were strong affiliations, there was some of us were radical about our views, and then we would
Yes.
sometimes we would even get into real arguments while we discuss things. But I think all that created this environment of discussion, speaking, and this whole
Yeah.
love for communication and meeting people, being with different kinds of people. So that's how it all started.
Yeah.
Then, of course, I had an education where I studied a bit in Delhi also. I had many years in the Mater Dei Convent, Delhi Public School, R.K. Puram, then the Lady Shri Ram College for Women, where I
Hmm.
think my identity as an empowered woman kind of really found expression. We also
Yes.
realized that we were fortunate to be some of the early women in India to have these opportunities. And then I went on to Jawaharlal Nehru University to pursue international relations at probably one of the most exciting times in the world, because that was 1989, when the entire
Wow.
communist black bloc was breaking up, East and West Germany, the Berlin Wall came down, and so many other events happened, perestroika, glasnost, and whatnot. So it was a very exciting period because you realize that the world is in a constant state of change. And if you do not change with times, you're going to remain stagnant and irrelevant. And I think that kind of stayed somewhere in the back of my head. Of course, I
Yes.
lost my father when I was in JNU, and that kind of made me change course to get into the civil services. I just appeared without really too much of preparation, unfortunately, but I made it to the Audit and Account Service and had some of the most wonderful experiences there. Uh,
Yeah.
Audit per se was not really my cup of tea, because I'm not really the kind of, I'm not the type to critique or criticize people's work. So I did
Wow.
a lot of opportunities to work outside of the department in several spheres. But high dignitary officers. I worked in the coffee board, where we had a lot of experience with market research on coffee, on building the coffee consumption in India. Then we did a discussion with McKinsey on a coffee strategy for Indian coffee. So these kind of things opened me up to a lot of the corporate culture, and the fact that there are certain, how these MBAs talk, how they kind of analyze subjects, how they go about putting across their points in a very structured manner. And I think all that came with all these interactions. Uh, to a point when I started training myself. I got into the training department in the CAG office first, where I trained a lot of our internal staff. And then I moved into the Parliament of India and the Rajya Sabha Secretariat, which really gave me an opportunity in training because I headed the training division for the Secretariat. We trained MPs, newly inducted MPs. We went on several conferences, and there was a whole lot of international exposure to a
Mm,
lot of great parliamentary debates. Those days Arun Jaitley and Sushma Swaraj were at their peak.
yes.
Also, those I would have a lovely ringside view of some wonderful parliamentary debates, including the first time the women's reservation bill was introduced. So there were a lot of interesting times that I went through. And then at some point, I think I realized that the there is something further that I need to do. And
Mm,
somewhere, because I was not directly dealing with people or directly touching people's lives, there was a disconnect. And then I decided to take a break. And of course, I had some issues. My mom was not well, and there were certain other issues. So I had to kind of take a break, step aside. It was a wonderful manthan, as we say. There's a beautiful mythological parable of the Samudra
yeah.
Manthan. You have a wonderful
Mm,
churning, and when you churn, you come. There's nectar that comes out, and then there's poison as well. And so you kind of churn everything out, and then emerges the ultimate bowl of nectar that you are going to swallow. So I think
yes.
that is when I really discovered my mojo, as I like to say, because I think
Yes.
this mojo, or your magical that one certain energy that you possess, or something that keeps you charged. You have to kind of be with that spirit and that charge permanently. And that, I thought, happened in speaking, in public speaking, in reaching out to people, and in connecting with people. So that's how I kind of gradually veered towards coaching, towards mentorship, towards even writing, because I wrote a lot of my experiences with leaders. So I called my
Yeah.
book my unforgettable leadership experiences. So thanks to my years in government, I had a lovely view of I worked in the governor's office in Karnataka, particularly, where we had met a lot of heads of state and senior leaders, religious leaders. So people who really have made an impact in this world. And so, as a mere observer, there were so many things that I picked up from them, small nuances of the way they spoke, or the what way they, Abdul Kalam taking a power nap in the middle of a very big meeting, or the
Wow.
Dalai Lama and his aura of happiness. So these kind of small things, Sudha Murthy and her commitment to social work. So these were the kind
Yes.
of small inputs that I gathered from my interactions with these leaders. So I thought I'd put them all together in a small leadership book and present it. So that was what was released in May this year. And by the grace of God, it was an Amazon bestseller. And I
Wonderful.
Rupa is kind of republishing it. So I'm waiting for that. And that's why I'm not really announcing it right now. So I think so that was my first tryst with writing, and now I think the bug has bitten me. And sometimes I think it's better to kind of stop talking and write also sometimes. So
Yeah.
another commitment I have.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's said that, when you speak, you will probably reach out to a few hundred, maybe sometimes a few thousand people. But if you write a book, that is forever. You will keep on inspiring and motivating thousands and lakhs of people across ages. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. That I think that's a wonderful way to put it. And that kind
Yes.
of reinforces my, confidence that I should continue to write and
Yeah.
speak about my experiences or whatever. Because I think there's a lot to learn from stories. And I don't mean just my story or your story, because every human being in this world has a story, and those stories can be made into such beautiful leadership lessons, self growth lessons. And that's what I need to channelize. And so therefore I became a leadership coach, where I try to say, I'm not talking to someone to become number one in the world. I think you've got to be a
Mm.
leader first of your own life. Take charge of
Yes.
yourself, discover
Yes.
where your own skills are, discover where your mojo is, and kind of
Yes.
use that to spread that aura around you.
Yeah.
i
So,
I read a very beautiful,
yeah. Please
sorry.
go ahead. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
No, I just wanted to share a very beautiful thing that I take. I'm also a spiritual seeker, so I do a couple of Bhagavad Gita classes and Vedanta classes. So in one class, there was a verse in the Bhagavad Gita, which was that where Swami Dayanand Saraswati of the Rishikesh Ashram has kind of written in his explanation that, when you have to be a miser, there's a verse which goes with karpanya dosha and all that. So if you are a kripan or a miser, if you are a miser with money or wealth, it's still okay because you are holding your money, but after you, your children or the next generation or somebody else is going to take it and make use of it. But if you are miserly with your knowledge and with your
Knowledge.
experience, it goes with you, and the world is
Yeah,
never ever getting to learn from you or understand that. So you should never
yeah,
be miserly or hold back any knowledge or any trait or anything, any skill or expertise that you have. And that kind of put me really into this motion, and that is where you mentioned the word sociopreneur. uh,
yes,
why I thought of sociopreneur is because I thought, firstly, I want to create social impact, but secondly, I also want to be an entrepreneur. I want to make it a kind of a self-sustaining venture which also earns
yeah,
money so that one can go ahead and keep doing it, and
yeah.
it impacts lives. And that's how the word sociopreneur.
Yes, I'm just trying to reconnect with something which you said just now about, after the person is gone, all this knowledge goes away. I remember 2 years ago when my dad passed away and he was 81, and he was a real expert at what he used to do, real years of experience. And when the doctor finally told us, it is time and then we can't do anything, I asked the doctor one question, you all have worked so much R&D on healing and repairing and getting a person back to normal, back to life. Try
Right.
and work on working that, all that knowledge which is there in the brain, if it can be downloaded to a hard disk, to the cloud, where all his experiences will remain even after the person is gone, that will be invaluable for humanity. So probably
Absolutely.
with AI coming and what not happening, probably not in our generation, but the next generation will probably be able to download everything and have that data, that knowledge somewhere. Of course,
Yes.
we've got the Gita and all our other books which are wisdom for us, which are guides for us, and our own experience. And two or three things struck me when you said, you used a few words like perestroika, glasnost, and you spoke about Bihar. 30 years ago, Bihar was a totally different Bihar from what we know and get to see today. And I'm just wondering in my head, if there is a Gen Z who is listening to this conversation, they will probably not understand fully where you are coming from and how you have seen change over the decades, over the years of your experience in your life. Tell us a little bit about Bihar of 30 years ago.
Bihar of 30 years ago was this, it was, I wouldn't say it was very backward for two reasons. One, I always felt Bihar led this country in several things, whether it was Mahatma Gandhi starting his first movement in Champaran, whether it was
Yes.
Jayaprakash Narayan and his movement, whether it was Acharya Vinoba Bhave and his Bhudan. So wherever
Yeah.
there has been a political revolution of sorts,
Yes.
it has been Bihar that has shown the way. And even when you
Yes.
talk of our ancient Indian civilization, it
Oh,
was the
yes.
Magadha
Nalanda.
Empire, it was
Yes.
Nalanda, it
Yes.
was Ashoka, all that is from Bihar. So we have this
Yeah.
whole, there is a huge wealth of knowledge and a huge, actually, Bihar is our motherland in a sense for all Indians because that's where it
Yes.
all began. That's where
Yeah.
civilization began. And that was my
Yes.
realization when I went to
Yeah.
Bihar. I realized that
Yeah.
even with all the poverty, which obviously
Yeah.
happened for several historical reasons, one being that
Mm.
the British, obviously, once they were kind of settled in Bengal, I think both Bihar and Orissa got the rough end of the, of everything.
Yes.
So they obviously
Yes.
were left out of the real, education, English, and a lot of the civil service jobs. So it all happened much later in Bihar and Orissa. Orissa, why
Um,
I speak of Orissa is again because of my personal interest. I have been married for the past 30 years to an Odia. So that is again a very,
oh.
very, so that state is again very close to my heart. And I think both of
Yeah.
them have these similarities. So the reason I
Yeah.
feel Bihar had this, so when you talk to the average Bihari, even in those days, 30 years ago, they knew exactly how to vote. Bihar
Yeah.
always voted the way the country voted. And
Yeah.
that was very different from my own home state of Tamil Nadu, where, all
Mm.
kinds different thought and processes and ideologies were going on. And
Yes.
film stars and people like, somebody just because he was fair and he was a film actor was such a big hero. It was a
Yes.
little, I used to feel more comfortable with the political understanding of the average Bihari. And I think the
Mm.
other thing that Bihar taught me was the ability to talk, because Biharis
Yeah.
are a very expressive group. So Bihar in those days, because I guess there was so little of development and too many other activities to do, often evenings
Yeah.
were just sitting with a whole bunch of, cross generational, some of my parents' friends, our friends, some
Yeah.
grandparents, all of them sitting together and just talking. And I think all
Yes.
that kind of brought in this whole sensitivity to people and their thoughts and their stories, and how you become a good listener, because I think every good speaker first has to be a good listener, because if you're unable to
Yes.
listen, then you will be only speaking, you will be only you'll be bulldozing your way and your opinions through everybody else, and that's not what
Mm.
it is expected of anybody who really wants to make an impact. uh,
Yeah.
the other beauty I liked about Bihar is that I think some of my longest standing friendships have come from there. And even today, that sisterhood of girls that we kind of grew together, they're all in such big places today. It's unbelievable. We all started from that small town of Patna, but we have CEOs, we have bureaucrats all over, we have foreign corporate giants, we have academic principals and whatnot. So if you look at that, it kind of gives me a great amount of hope for a lot of the B and C towns of today, that there
Mm.
is so much
Yeah.
that they do. And
Yeah.
the world is their oyster if they just go about and set out for it. And that's the kind
Yes.
of message I'd like to give. And my
Yeah.
sociopreneur and venture is also kind of targeted to the B and this, the smaller
Mm.
towns and the remoter areas of India, which do not
Yeah.
have access to, the pomp and show and splendor of many of our bigger metropolis towns.
Yes, yes. You mentioned the word manthan, and after listening to you, the word that came into my mind was sangam. A Tamilian born and brought up in Bihar and married to an Oriya. Now this is a sangam of all different parts and knowledge of generations from the all corners of the country. Education in Delhi, married to Oriya, Bihar, Tamilian. So all of them coming together. Now you also mentioned these two or three names. You when you said about Bihar, you said about Jayaprakash Narayan, you said about Mahatma Gandhi starting. You also speak about leadership. You coach leaders. All these leaders, these people you named, came from humble backgrounds. So,
Absolutely.
is that the key to leadership? For somebody to grow up and become a leader, does it necessarily have to be humble openings, humble groundings, slowly growing up, climbing the ladder, and becoming a leader? Does it work that way?
I wouldn't like to put it in such a black and white way, Deepak, for the simple reason that I myself am not from a humble background. I do recognize that I came from a fairly privileged. We may not have been rich in terms of money, but we were rich in
Yeah,
terms of experience and education. So that gave us
yeah,
a lot of. But having said that, I do agree that humility is is probably the cornerstone of good leadership. The
yeah,
moment ego and arrogance enters your leadership style, I think you
yes,
lose every advantage that you gain with all
yeah,
other qualifications. So until and unless you stay grounded and you realize that you are but a peg in the entire, and that nobody is indispensable in this world.
yeah,
So I think the
yeah,
greatest, in fact, I have mentioned my meeting with Jayaprakash Narayan as a 10-year-old girl. And the thing was, he was soft spoken. The best thing about the leaders we talked about are they never hankered after political posts. They did not
yeah,
want any positions. They stayed in the
yes,
background. They created the movement and then let other leaders take over. And they went
yeah,
on to continue to work with the masses, continue to
yeah,
work with their principles, of great emphasis on truth, which is such a big, sometimes value education and ethics in today's day and age is looked down upon as, irrelevant. But somewhere I think that is where we lose out, because
yeah,
value, ethics, morals, these are all things. If you are not able to stick to the truth, then you are not
yeah,
brave at all. What's the point of being a WWE wrestler if you can't speak the truth and have moral courage to take a stand at
Yeah.
the right time.
Yes.
So
Again,
I
we are
think that
talking about leadership. Yeah. What are your views? Why isn't leadership as a skill taught to children in school or in colleges or in MBA institutions? Or does it need people like you who have grown up, who have worked with leaders, who have reached a point where they can now distill their knowledge and then pass it on to the next level of leadership? How does that work?
Deepak, I think a lot of it is also to go with the kind of education system we had. And I'm so glad that the new education policy is looking at this and making amends, because our whole insistence on, rote learning, on the exam oriented learning, and on
Yeah.
kind of scoring 99 percentile just to get admission into colleges and schools, uh, all that has created a whole set of clones, and each one
Yeah.
wants to. So there's a system, and the ones who crack that system do well. The ones who do not
Yeah.
crack that system are considered failures forever. And that's the
Yes.
problem with, and this happens at a very early age in schools. And
Yeah.
therefore, my entire endeavor in this sociopreneur event, we have an ed tech company, and we are looking at bridging this gap between the curriculum and what really are the real world skills that a child
Yes.
needs. For example, even
Yeah.
skills in coding and computing and artificial intelligence. We did a survey
Yeah.
of the entire CBSE, ICSE, IB syllabi, and we realized that if you look at each one of them individually, not a single one of them prepares you really for the full real time experience of the world. Similarly, I have
Yes.
spoken to several engineering graduates, even vice chancellors of engineering institutions, and they say
Mm,
that the actual coding skills, even among computer science engineers in India, is so pathetically low, because sometimes we
yes.
don't have qualified teachers, sometimes this whole insistence of only scoring high marks in the exam, you know,
Yeah.
has kind of created a distortion in our education system. And
Ye-
that is what we want to address.
Yeah. You just now spoke about engineering, and I was part of a conference which was happening 2 days ago, and there
Uh-huh.
was a batch of MBA students who were there, who were trying and connecting and networking with people like us so that they can, know and learn from our experience. And this is something which I have seen. 80% of people who pass out of engineering colleges end up doing MBA and then start doing finance, and not their core learning experience of engineering, which could have helped them build bridges or, electronics or computers. As you said, computer engineering students do not have enough knowledge of coding. That's how the
Yes.
system is, that's how it works. Yeah.
In fact,
So when
Sir
you, yeah,
Vishwesvaraya, who's the father of engineering in India, again, Karnataka, where I worked for almost 17 years, and Bihar, where he first went to create the projects there. So he had a very different view of engineering, and somehow the kind of engineers that have come into the world, because engineering has now become a fast track to jobs. And that's why
yes.
everybody, every nook and corner, you have an engineering college. Sometimes in small garages, even you can open an engineering college. You don't have any equipment, you don't have, and I would say even our IITs and some of our real premier institutions, maybe excluding Indian Institute of Science and a couple of others, the
Yeah.
entire research kind of wealth that should have come from these
Yeah.
IITs has really not come, because they're, as you say, they're all looking at CAT. The minute they crack IIT, the next hurdle is CAT, so they join
Yeah.
coaching class, and the biggest money spinners today are these coaching institutes,
Coding classes.
coaching classes, and
Yeah.
they just teach you how a 30 percenter after doing 4 5 years in a coaching institute becomes a 99 percenter. And that doesn't
Yeah.
really, it doesn't show any kind of growth in any sense except learning how to crack a system.
Yeah, social media was abuzz a few months ago about a trainer who was part of these coaching class institute who said that, I make 5 lakh rupees a day and I'm getting a job from a competitor who's offering me even more than that. The guy was just teaching others how to crack the CAT and IIT JEE and all these exams. So in addition to the students, it is actually these classes who are becoming profitable and money making machines.
Absolutely.
Having
Every
said
morning
that, yeah,
you only see
yeah.
these ads for these coaching institutes.
Full
Sorry,
page,
yes.
full page ads, full page ads. Yeah. So when you are, coaching leaders, what are you seeing today probably different from maybe 8, 10, 12, 15 years ago. As the world is changing, as we are becoming more and more technology oriented, AI is taking over anything, everything nowadays. How are today's leaders different from, say, 10 years ago? And how are upcoming leaders adapting themselves to be ready for the challenge, which is actually unknown? 5 years later, what is going to be the scene? I'm sure nobody can say that this is what is going to be. So, how do you train these leaders? And how are today's leaders training their second and third rung leadership to take over from where they are?
Absolutely, a very relevant question, Deepak, that because the kind of changes the world has seen in the last 10 years has never been
Yeah,
seen ever by in the history of humanity or of
yeah,
the globe, I think, of Earth itself or of creation itself. Uh,
yeah,
as you say, artificial intelligence is a big challenge. It has changed the entire perception of how we do everything. Why only
yeah,
leaders? Changed
yes,
everything from the way we cook to the way we eat to the way we talk to the way we dress. I think this whole globalization and this world is flat concept has
yeah,
brought us all closer in many ways, but it has also been a big challenge to leadership because today, thanks to this little instrument you have with you, you can Google just about anything and become an expert on anything you want without really without really going through the steps. And I think in
yeah,
any information overload arena, what
yeah,
really makes a person stand out is how much of inner reconstruction and inner engineering has happened in that particular human being. How
yes,
inwardly solid is he or she? How, what are the kind of beliefs, what is the kind of upbringing, what are the kind of the kind of exposure and the kind of reading, the kind of experiences and the kind of skills that the person possesses.
yeah,
We somehow tend to forget all that and hold on to these external clutches and become leaders. And that's where I think even leaders are failing. As we already spoke about arrogance and ego, so something that has become a very big problem is ego. And the fact that we all, with the cake becoming smaller and claimants becoming larger, everyone wants to
yeah,
kind of hold on as tight as possible. So nobody wants to retire. Nobody wants to set up a second rung. Nobody wants to delegate. People are all
yeah,
insecure. And with youngsters coming in who are so articulate, and this young generation that's coming today is
yes,
is is amazing in many ways. And yet
yes,
there is something that can never replace the years of experience and wisdom that
yeah,
definitely even they will realize when they probably hit 50 or 60 or whatever.
yes,
So
yeah,
right now it is you're kind of taken in by the shine and the glamour of all these new inventions, but eventually no matter how artificial intelligence goes, it all goes on how you train the computer. So you have to
yes,
train similarly. Your
yeah,
intelligence and your leadership qualities cannot come from any external circumstance. It has to come
yes,
from in you. You cannot,
yeah,
and I think again, I'm going back to the Bhagavad Gita. I think the word sthita prajna, which is used in the Bhagavad Gita, or equanimity is probably the best English translation for that word. The kind of
yes,
ability to maintain your, equilibrium
yeah,
regardless of circumstances, that really shows sense strength of character. And many
yeah,
people who never faced challenges or never really faced major failures, uh,
yeah,
we really never know how good they are unless we realize how they deal with failure, how they deal with adversity. So
yeah,
that's what we need to teach, and that's what we need to, I think, whenever I take leadership classes, I try to make people build their character, build their own ability to withstand uh, all the storms in that life is going to invariably bring to you. And I think nothing
yes,
brought it forth more than the COVID pandemic, because I think
yes,
that has while it was a real torture in many ways, it also brought us closer to our own vulnerabilities and our own, you know
mhm,
uh, our own fact that we're not immortal, and our own mortality was brought to light so clearly.
yeah,
So
yeah,
probably this is a very exciting time to be a leadership coach, because it's
yes,
you've got a lot of modern tools, a lot of technology, a lot of new developments to bring in, but you also have a whole lot of old world knowledge, wisdom, and experience which you need to build. So it's a
Yeah.
nice amalgamation that I feel is what leadership coaches can really use in today's day and age.
Yeah, wonderfully well said. And there is something else which I would like to bring in and have your views too. Since you talk about spirituality, you spoke about Bhagavad Gita, you are training leaders, you are coaching them. We've seen this shift in the last 8 to 10 years again. Most of these biggest world's organizations are now being led by Indians. Microsoft has Satya Nadella, Google has, Sundar Pichai, World Bank, Mastercard, you name it. Most of these big organizations are now having Indians as leaders. Just 15, 20 years ago, we used to look to the West for everything. Now the West is looking towards us. These
Yes.
Indians have gone and established themselves as world class leaders. Is there something in us, innately inside, which makes us good leaders, good people, good learners?
Well, as a quick answer to that question, I think the most important is, I guess, the fact that we just have thousands and thousands of years of history behind us, and we have, the genetic mapping. If you look at our Indian genes, I'm sure most
Yes,
of us have had hundreds of generations of, people who've been only contemplating, looking at the world curiously, trying to find reasons for different occurrences, trying to train the mind. Also, I guess, memorize a lot of shlokas and things like that. So there's been a whole lot of emphasis on training the mind. So whether it is
yes,
mathematics, because I think all of us as kids were forced to learn the tables by heart, and I think
yes, yes,
that is something luckily most kids do even today. But
yes,
this calculator and the mobile phone has been a real bane of all that, because I think all of us, when we were young, we used to remember most telephone numbers here. So this was our
yeah,
biggest memory block. We
yeah,
didn't really need this stupid box that we are now relying on. So I think that did
yeah,
help us, and the fact that we all that and the leaders you talk about also grew up in that generation. But
yes,
more than that, I think Indians also have had a family surrounding them. They've all grown up with this whole legacy of having grandparents at home, of sharing
yeah,
stories. There's an emotional support system that our neighborhoods, we, even if you are a nuclear family, your
yeah,
colony, your immediate neighbors, there's a whole community. Like, we also have a community of speakers, which we'll be talking about later. So whatever you want to do, you can find yourself. I guess also we are just so many of us, so we are able to find a support system wherever we go. And while the first generation of Indians who went to the US went with very, with a whole lot of trepidation and not really sure of where they were going to go, I think the second
yeah,
generation that went in came in with the
yes,
learning from their experiences. And also, by then the world had opened up. There was far more liberalism. And I think the whole
yeah,
questioning mind had become far more, India's independence had become a far more established reality. So that the generation of the 90s, post the
yeah,
liberation,
yeah,
liberalization, who went abroad, certainly had
yeah,
more confidence and more ability to lead. And
yeah.
I know it very
Mm.
well because as a probationer, I was trained by Satya Nadella's father. He was the director of our academy at Masuri,
Wow,
um,
wow.
Ugandhar, and one of the
Yeah.
toughest leaders, one of the most important personalities. So I think we've lost you, Deepak. Okay. So I think that's so when I know, since I know the father, I think I know where Satya gets his leadership's qualities from. I think, yeah, that's it. I think that's where Indians shine. And today, Indians
Yeah.
have learned to kind of also, earlier we were very closed. Today, we open out to other cultures. We are open to other cuisines, other
Yeah.
languages. We
Yeah.
also become global citizens in that way. We dress like everyone else. We talk like
Yes.
everyone else. So we have the same
Yeah.
accent as them. So there is no,
Yeah.
we don't look quaint or outward aliens anymore. That also has
Yeah.
helped.
I'm just taking off from what you said just now, the second generation Americans. We now have an Indian, Vivek Ramaswamy, who is the possible presidential candidate for the USA. In maybe in 2024, we'll see a second generation Indian becoming the president of the United States. A
Yeah.
fantastic speaker. I have seen him just put his crowd, and the anchor just shut them up with two or three sentences of his answers. Extremely powerful speaker. Just on that note, I was speaking with Vikas Jain, who talks about world class quadrant and top 1 percentile of speakers from Delhi. And I was telling him, why are all the professional speakers whom we get to hear in India and also probably abroad either gray haired or having lost their hair? And then he said, there is no other way for you to be able to stand up on the stage, speak with authority and experience. It takes that years of knowledge, having worked in a particular sector, in an institution, having done something to stand up. So, your views on becoming a professional speaker?
As I already told you, I loved speaking always, but since all our 30 years in Sarkar was giving bhashans and talking to different kinds of people. But what I really thought was missing was the the conversation one to one, and the thing that people who really need to hear you were not there to hear you. It was you were just
Yeah,
talking in your office, or you were talking to at a conference, but where were the real people whom you wanted to talk to? So that's what gave me an idea, but of course I had no way to understand what I could do with my abilities or my interest or my passion for speaking, till I came
yeah,
across the PSAI, or the Professional Speakers Association of India, which I must thank Sandeep Gupta for, because he kind of just connected with me and said, "Would you like to join?" And I said, "Look,
yeah,
I'm not really a professional speaker, because I haven't yet started charging to make speeches, but I'm a leadership
yeah,
coach and I do speak and I do get money because of that. And so probably
yeah,
yes, but more than anything else, I want to know what is professional speaking, and how do I hone my skills, or how do I bring in whatever is lacking in my ability to talk or in my ability to connect. And
yes,
what better way to do it than to join a community of the best and then learn
yeah,
from each other? And I think that's
yeah,
what PSAI, my entire year with PSAI, has taught me so much. I think the first thing it's given me is platforms such as this, yours, where I'm able to talk and speak and express. That itself is
yeah,
such a rare thing. And then over and above that, like you and like so many other wonderful speakers, you get an opportunity to hear people. You have opportunities to test your speaking skills and have it evaluated by an expert panel. And then you have
yes,
a lot of weekly programs, a lot of connection. So I think there is nothing like practice and learning from each other. And
yes,
that is a skill which one, till the day you die, you have to learn. If you stop learning, you stop living, and that's my motto.
yes,
So nothing
yes,
like PSAI to learn professional speaking from. And also for those who want to try out, will I be a speaker of any kind of value? Will someone even want to hear me out? A lot of people
yes,
have wonderful things to speak, but hesitate to
yes,
really come out and talk because they don't have this kind of a supporting panel to kind of tell them that, hey, look, you have this unique quality. Come, you can, we'll help you build your speaking style or your presentation skills, or maybe even the content, but come out and start talking. And I think that's
yeah,
where PSAI has done wonderful job. And I just hope that more and more people join and we learn, because if the more we members join, we also, the original existing members, also learn from that. So that's why
yeah.
it just keep growing.
Yeah. I can just share my story. I remember when I was school, it was our 10th standard, and our vice principal suddenly walked in one day into the class and said, Deepak, I have nominated you to represent the school at the inter-school elocution competition. So she's heard me before on stage and, having taken part in school activities. And I started crying, no, I don't want to go. I will not be able to do it. Please cancel my name and whatnot. She said, no, no, no. I know what you can do. Why you are worrying? Why are you afraid? I said, no, 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 no. I don't want to do this. And finally, I convinced her to take my name off and nominate somebody else. Today,
Oh,
after having been a part of PSA, I stand up and call myself a professional speaker. I probably may have impacted 10,000 plus lives. I have hosted 170 plus online and offline shows. So from being the classic example of, the fear of public speaking, to today being a part of the Professional Speakers Association of India, For
Brilliant.
anybody who's listening to Sharda and me, we are coming up with the Professional Speakers Summit in February. This is the place where professional speakers from India and international speakers will be coming, addressing us, meeting us, networking us. It is going to be 3 days of extreme learning, experiencing what other people are doing, how they are doing it, how they manage to call themselves professional speakers, how do they get booked to get 2,000, 3,000, even $5,000 an hour to come and speak on stage. So if you're listening to this and if you haven't yet joined the PSAI, please, please, please go ahead, connect with PSAI, anyone, myself, Sharda. Then visit us at psai.in. Special offers going on for membership and to attend PSS 24 happening in February 22nd, 3rd, and 4th of February 2024. Do join in the PSAI and experience the power, experience the magic of standing up and calling yourself a professional speaker. Let's get back to Sharda and learn from her experiences on how to find your mojo. And since she's talking of leadership, how does a leader who is right there at the top find out that this junior of mine has that spark? This is the person whom I can pick up and mentor and bring him to the next level.
That's a very important question. But before that, I think I should also make it clear that I don't think just becoming a professional speaker makes you, that stage fright or that initial nervousness to speak, I think remains with us. It's a question of
Always.
how do you deal with it and continue to
Yes.
speak regardless of feeling nervous and, feeling a little hesitant. So
Yeah.
it's not as if it goes away. Uh, but again, to come back to your question about leaders, it is a difficult task sometimes to pick up the right kind of subordinates, sensing the spark in them on potential leadership. But I think if you have built that level of empathy within you, and if you have understood and you're able to judge and see people and assess situations in a completely dispassionate, non-partial manner, you will
Yeah.
pick up the right people to take up the correct tasks. If you have understood your job well and you know what
Yeah.
it takes to do that job well, you will also know who are the people who have those skills, who can replace you or take your legacy forward, or whatever it is that you want your next generation to do. And it should happen organically. I think one can do it without of course it is a little, it's an art that needs to be developed. One of the things that probably wisdom and experience teaches you, because I think all of us have made wrong judgments of people, of events, of our own capabilities, and I think it's all these mistakes that really make us what we are. so uh,
Yeah.
so basically, a lot of intuition. You have to go with a lot of your intuition and your gut feeling, but
Yes.
you also learn to kind of drive your intuition and marry it with some amount of rationality and experience to come to somewhat correct decisions.
Yeah. I want your views on this. One generation ago, a lot of family owned businesses, whether they were small or whether they were big, used to get a leader internally, probably from the family itself, who used to graduate up and, become the boss of the company or lead the company ahead. We are now seeing all these family owned businesses, whether small or big, again, realize the importance of having professional managers, professional leaders who can lead their company to the next level. So, your views on that?
I would encourage families to stop, bequeathing companies to their children, to their incapable or not very capable kids. Indians in general, while the family system has been a great, powerful, support system for us, etc., etc., we also have this terrible feeling that I need to earn and protect and build houses and build companies and everything for my own kids. So this whole feeling
Yeah,
of me, mine, my children, only me. Even in sometimes as a mother, I also feel this glorification of the mother and this mother doing everything. Why should a mother pray that mera beta first I think that's the most selfish kind of prayer that a mother can do. Because the minute you go to God and say, hey, God, my son should or my daughter should come first, you are also
Uh,
saying that everybody else's child should not come
should not
first.
come first.
It's an
Yes.
extremely, yeah. So it's an extremely selfish, sometimes the kind of glorification we do for our parents is
Yes.
a little bit selfish. It's very very selfish, I would say. And
Uh,
glorifying motherhood to the point where you say, a mother is the one who sacrifices. Sacrifice is a bad word, because I think you're just denying 50% of the population or the citizens of India the ability to choose for themselves whether they really want to do this or that. If you have the ability to be a top class executive, you may have to sometimes give a backseat to your children. And children,
yeah.
while you have a responsibility to your children, you also have a responsibility to yourself and to society and to the future. And I find that your children also turn out to be better if you are not available at every small problem, ready to hold their hand. And because that's when they really learn to make their own mistakes. And sometimes I
Yeah.
think this the while the western thing where children at 18 are encouraged to move out, live their own lives, make their own money, not depend on parents' wealth. Sometimes, even the richest individuals, their children are literally working out their way. So that kind of gives you a huge amount of belief in your own abilities. And like you said about the people who come back from humble backgrounds and become leaders, I think
Yeah.
if you don't mollycoddle your children and make them, our Indian second generation business leaders, very rarely, I think there are very few exceptions where they've done well. I mean, most of them have just been, so this whole Nepo story is everywhere in India, whether
Yeah.
it is corporate India or it's political India or it is Bollywood India.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and it's all because of our great insistence on my, mine, my family, and I, and my community, myself. So this I
Yeah.
looking, it should go into, from me, you should move to the we. That's what I say. So if you can move to the
Yeah.
we, then you become a better leader.
Yeah, I'll just take you on and I'll actually name a few names where in the recent past we had seen that the old promoter actually moved out and brought in a professional to manage the company. We saw that with Infosys, we saw that with the Tatas, and there came a time when the old promoter had to throw out this person who was brought in. They
Family
had to
came,
sit down on the seat and then try and find somebody else all over again. So again,
and the
your views
family
on this,
the family
Yeah,
came back. That was the bad
yeah,
thing. So
yeah.
regardless, we can't help it. We can't help. I think we need to forget. We need to look beyond family and my own nephew, my brother, my son, my grandson. It's
Yeah,
it's not easy. We all are Indians, and we've all been brought up to believe and live in that way. And you're a bad
yeah,
mother or a bad father if you start, if you're a father and you don't support your son.
yeah.
But supporting a son and becoming a crutch for him are two different things. And I think that is
Yes.
we need to learn the difference. That's
Yeah,
where
yeah, yeah. Today if somebody comes to you and tells you, Sharda, I'm interested in becoming a leader, what would you say to him or her? How would you help them? And a few tips after listening to this program saying, do A, do B, do C, do D, and then keep on doing it, and then you will rise up as a leader. So, your few, just two or three sentences on how to grow and become a leader.
for me, it's a very simple mantra, Deepak. I say, engineer yourself. Become, first look inwards, build your character, inculcate discipline, inculcate hard work, ensure that you have, kind of first cleared your head, brought in some clarity. What is it that you can do? What is it that you cannot do? Don't create create your space, and you be a leader in your own space. That space could be the nation, you could be the prime minister of India, it could be a small company, or it could be your own little home. But wherever
Yeah,
it is, try to lead. And a leader doesn't necessarily have to be a somebody who dominates or rides over everybody else. A leader is one
yeah,
who's able to take an initiative, hold a point, reach out to others, uplift others, help others grow. So I think that whole nourishing kind of nurturing leader is something that we can easily develop in every phase and in every stage of life. You can be a leader in your little Montessori class. You can be a
Yes.
leader as a rag picker. So there are so
Yeah.
many ways in which leadership can be expressed. Uh,
Yeah.
of course, and I think the same qualities eventually make you a big leader in whichever place you go. So
Yeah.
so basically, I would like to focus on the individual and the value system and the belief and the hard work, the discipline, the ability to handle adversity, face criticism. These are all, developing a thick skin, understanding that, uh, do your job, don't really focus on the results. Very similar to
Yeah.
what Krishna says, karmanye vadikaraste na ma phaleshu kadachana. So I think that is a lesson for
Yeah.
us all. If we kind of remove the religion out of it, there's a whole lot of
Yeah.
corporate teaching that we can imbibe, and that's where we
Yeah.
should focus.
Yes, as they say, you take the first step, log jurte gaye or karma banta gaya. Take that
Again,
first step. Take that
absolutely.
first step. Do something different. There will be followers. There will be people who will wanting to join you, who will officially anoint you as their leader, even before you stand up and say that I am your leader. They will make
Absolutely.
your leader. It is your experiences, your work, your dedication, which is going to take you and the nation probably to newer heights. What
Maybe
a our
intention,
yeah,
consistency, and
go ahead.
commitment.
Yes, so
You have the right
consistency. Yeah,
intention, consistency,
yes,
and commitment to it, then you will definitely
commitment.
shine.
Yeah. Yeah, as they say, consistency compounds, and compounding is the topic which I talk and speak on. So, whatever you do, you keep on doing and you give it time, and then what happens
Yes.
towards the end is completely different from where you started. It takes you to a totally different place. We've spent the
Yeah,
last 60
I
minutes
think you and
talking
I are
about
examples.
almost yes, VNR are classic examples of the power of compounding. Started small, kept on doing it, kept on upscaling, becoming better, and we have reached a point where we are now giving it back to people. We are now giving it back to society. The fact
Yeah.
that you are a socialpreneur, you are helping people become, rise, and become new leaders. As it was said, 5 years later, what is going to be the look and feel of this country, the look and feel of life, how technology may have taken over us, how we will manage, learn, adapt, and adopt that technology to become better people, better leaders, and of course, better speakers for the Professional Speakers Association of India. Let me again remind everyone the PSS 2024 is happening in February 2nd, 3rd, and 4th in New Delhi. If you are not already a member of the PSAI, connect with us, join in, and it's going to be a gala time networking, learning, and experiencing what PSAI is. Thank you, Sharda, for taking time out, for agreeing to be our guest tonight, for sharing your years of experience and wisdom with everyone who is watching us today across social media channels. Let me take this opportunity to thank you and hand it over to Anupriya on the backstage to finally come and close this. Thank you so much, Sharda.
Thank you so much, Deepak. It was indeed an honor to be here. Thank you.